Great. All right, welcome to another episode of the Tech Transfer Podcast. I'm here with Devin Miller of Miller IP and also the Inventive Journey Podcast, which I've seen on YouTube, but I bet it's on podcast, on Spotify and all kinds of other places. Devin, you want to introduce yourself just a little bit?
Absolutely. That's a whole long discussion in and of itself, but I'll try to give the shorter version. So I'm Devin Miller. So I am I guess by trade, I'm an intellectual property attorney. I do a lot of patents and trademarks and other things, but I kind of have always loved both entrepreneurship as well as the legal side of things. And so my background is I have 4 degrees. So I have electrical engineering, Mandarin Chinese, an MBA, as well as a law degree. And so with that, I've really kind of throughout my career always pursued kind of both the business or the entrepreneur startup kind of side of things as well as the business. So I've done a few startups and small businesses, everything from food trucks to wearables to lead generation business. And those have always, kind of always a side hustle put in quotes because it's really more of a second full-time job, but I enjoy it, so it makes it fun. And then alongside of that, for about 10, 11 years now, I've been doing intellectual property where I work with a ton of startups and small businesses to help them with their protect and grow their business. And then the last thing is a father of 4. So I have kids ages 8 to 13, oldest is a son, and then 3 girls, and married for about 16 years. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right, not bad. You got a lot of things going on. So I was an attorney first, and then now I got a business degree, an MBA, and now I work in tech transfer, licensing out university technology. So I work with startups. It sounds like you went the other direction. You probably launched businesses first before you were an attorney. Is that right?
This kind of, as weird as it sounds, it's almost a chicken and the egg. So the first business that I started was when I was doing my JD MBA, so law degree as well as my MBA degree. And so that business, that one's still live today. I'm pretty passive, just an investor or owner, but I don't do anything actively on it. But that when I started, while I was studying both of those degrees, started out as a business competition. It was one of those where you get people together from different degrees and y'all meet and greet, and then you come up with ideas and pitch those. And so that was a genesis for the wearable company that I started. And so it was probably really about the same. I was doing law school. I was a law clerk, and then I was also doing the business competition, which spun out to an actual business on the side. So it probably hit pretty close as far as when I started down the kind of both routes. I always kind of say, you could either take the path or well-traveled or less traveled. And I'm like, well, let's go right down the middle, and I'll do both of them.
Nice. Well, good. And I should say, because a lot of people watching this are in Utah, that you're in Ogden, Utah, right? That's where Miller IP is.
Yeah. And so, just right by Weber State University.
Okay, great. So you're super aware of entrepreneurs and IP challenges. What do you see as the key IP issues for entrepreneurs? Like, say someone's starting out.
I'd say the very first one is money, but that's not necessarily, that's just getting it or things or anything up and going. I mean, it's always a balance of, time and money. And, sometimes you have more of one and less of the other, or vice versa. There's some people that have, hey, I've got a successful business. I have a successful career and I want to go out and start a business. And so they have the time, or they have the money that they've saved up, but the money or the time is the one where they, it's hard to find that time to, hey, I've got a full-time job, I've got family responsibilities, and how do I do all of that? And vice versa. Sometimes you'll say, okay, my day job isn't all consuming, and I have some time, to do a side hustle, but now how do I fund that, or how I go about doing it? So that one's kind of, I'd say in quotes, generic answer was probably one where people hit a little bit as they get started. If you're to go more to the legal side of things, it's probably one where people don't, it's a lot of things that you don't know. It's kind of like when I get into taxes, there's a lot of things that I just don't know, and nor do I ever care to really learn. I don't really want to know all the intricacies of the IRS and the tax code and everything, but you need to know enough of it to make sure you're covered as a business owner. And so that's kind of the same thing again with the legal side. Is there's a lot of, whether it's patents or trademarks or copyrights or NDAs or non-competes or employment agreements or all those things, a lot of things to cover. And yet, until you get into it, you just the one that there's just a lot to learn, and you kind of have to figure out where to start and how to balance all of that.
Mm-hmm. And so new startup companies are typically cash strapped. They might have a little bit of money. I could hire someone for a corporate organization issue, like get my cap table right up front or get a patent filed. Like, how do you make those kinds of decisions when you're a new entrepreneur?
Oh, dude, I don't know. It's a fair question. I mean, the way that I would go about doing it is saying, what is the most valuable part of the business earliest on, right? So in other words, if it is, hey, we have really cool technology and we are just going to go out and we want to license it, or we want to sell it, or we want to partner with someone, or we want to leverage it to go out and do an investor. Well, then your intellectual property, your patents are probably get moved up in the line, versus if you're saying, hey, and we do it as an example, a mom and pop shop. Hey, I just want to go open a new business. It's just down the street, serve the local community. And, those are great and awesome. And you probably don't need as much intellectual property, both patents or trademarks, because you're not necessarily inventing anything new. And you're not really, if you're just serving the local community, while brand can be important with the local community, trademarks can take a bit of a backseat. And so in that case, I'd probably make sure you have your food handler's license if it was a food shop, or a business license, and set up an LLC. So it's kind of one where I always would say, first, you take a step back and say, what is the core of the business? What are we building around it? And how do we protect that earliest on? And that's kind of where I try and do a checklist. Now, it's not a definitive checklist, because every business, there's always more things to do than time to do it, or money to afford it. And so you're always doing that balance. But that's kind of the best way that I found is take a step back. What is the core of the business? And then how do I go about setting it up to make sure that core part of the business is successful?
So great. I think what you're saying is be strategic, right? A lot of these issues can suck you in. Like, if you want to, as an entrepreneur, you could spend all your day working on the patenting issues, but you got to run a business. So somehow you have to manage that. So you're by Weber State, which is great. And we have a bunch of major universities nearby. Have you interacted with any of the tech startups coming out of universities? Or are seeing some of that? What's been your experience with IP startups like that?
Yeah, so kind of all the above. There are some of the businesses that have come out of university, and it's usually, we see them kind of at the stage after it's usually students that have graduated and then are continuing on after graduation. We've done that. We also worked with the various tech transfer offices, including BYU, U of U, Utah State, Weber. A lot of that is more so from our side has been, we'll have clients that are doing joint research or development, or otherwise doing joint projects with the university. And so, which I think is a great resource for a lot of startups and small businesses. You can, for what I'll say is the best bang for your buck, get a lot of resources through the university of using, and it's beneficial on both sides. The students get access to a business that they get experience, they're getting background, they're seeing how the real world runs, they're getting, all of that background, and the businesses oftentimes will get the kind of the resource of a lot of smart students at a decent rate that they can get a lot of work done without having to go hire the people that have been out in their career for 10 or 15 years and demand the high salaries. And so it's kind of one where that one's a good one. Now, there are some intricacies to it, as I'm sure you're aware, with the tech transfer office to make sure that all the ownerships are right and the licensing is right, or, everything is seamless. But I think that's kind of the two interactions. It's either people coming out of school that have started a business while they were a student and then want to pick it up and do it full time kind of after graduation, or those businesses that want to have that presence or interacting with the university as part of their development.
Yeah, that's great. And your point on research, I totally agree. I tell startups too that for bang for your buck, you can't do much better than university research. You don't have to buy whatever massive machine you need. The university already has that. And then, like you're saying, the student employees, you're getting a grad student who a few months from now will be paying, some major salary at a research firm. And right now you're getting them for, I don't know, student wages. I don't know what those are, $15 an hour, something low. So pretty great bargain.
Yeah.
So for any of these, for our companies, for BYU startups or any of the universities you work with, IP is hugely important. They're always thinking patent. So can you explain what you think people should know about the patent process if they're a new entrepreneur?
Yeah, and I would probably take just one or slight step back, because I think that for those that are, if you're deep into or business or legal and that, it's pretty straightforward. But a lot of times we'll have people even come into our office and say, hey, I've got a great idea that I want to protect. Let's go get a trademark, or vice versa. Hey, I've got a great business and it's a great brand. I think I need to get a patent on it. So maybe we're one step back is just walking through kind of the 3D core areas of intellectual property, just for those that are less familiar, which would be you have patents, trademarks, copyrights, right? So patents are going to go towards an invention, something that has the utility, functionality, it does something. Trademarks are going to go more towards the branding. So name of a company, name of a product, catchphrase, logo, those type of things are all fall under trademarks. And copyrights are going to go something that's more on the creative nature, creative work. So oftentimes a book, a sculpture, a painting, a song, a video, a movie, all those type of things are going to go under copyrights. And so first thing is probably just, if you're for any business, look and see what is it do we need to protect? Are we a brand business? Are we going to have a great reputation? We're going to be the next Built Bar for down at BYU, and we're going to build up a really big reputation. And while we may have a little bit of maybe patentable stuff, it's really are hard on the brand, then let's go with the trademark. Vice versa on the patent side, if you're saying, hey, we're in the electrical engineering, just because I went to electrical engineering down at BYU, and we're in that, and we have a really cool technology that we think is going to be unique, then you're going to go focus more on the patent side because you're going towards the technology that you're wanting to protect. Now, to a bit of your question, kind of the first thing that I would, the thing that oftentimes catches people that they're not necessarily aware of on the patent side is kind of two things. One is the realization that it is a first to file system, meaning the presumption is whoever files a patent on an invention or an idea first, it has to be really an invention, is going to be the presumptive inventor. That means if you have a great idea and you start working on it and somebody comes along a week later and files a patent on it, technically, yes, you can probably go and show that you started earlier, but you now are in a position where you have to overcome that presumption of who is the first to invent it and what can you invalidate their patent. And it goes through just a deeper rabbit hole, which is usually a lot more time, money, and effort than you'd want to spend in order to prove that they weren't the first to invent it and therefore shouldn't be granted a patent. And so that's kind of one, is the first to invent system. The other one that people oftentimes get caught up on is public disclosure and offering for sale.
Right.
So public disclosure and offering for sale, basically the way I'd explain it is anytime you put your invention out in the public, that can be putting it on a website, doing a white paper on it, doing a presentation, going and pitching it, offering it for crowdfunding, anytime it hits the public, whether it's offering it to somebody to buy it or just simply putting it out there for people, you get a 1-year time clock ticking within which you have to file a patent application on it if you want to pursue patent protection. So if you miss that 1-year window, you put it out there, and 2 years down the road, you say, hey, we're finally ready to get going on the patent stuff, and we have the money saved up, or we want to get that protection, you've already missed that window. And so those are kind of the two things out of the chute to be aware of for a lot of startups or small businesses and students and those type of things that they oftentimes don't necessarily aren't aware of on the front end.
And in my experience, many good inventors are kind of perfectionists too. That helps them be good at what they're doing. Like electrical engineering, for example, you want some perfectionists working on that, right? And if you're a perfectionist, though, you're not going to want to proceed with patenting until the thing's ready, until it's really good and you've made it. But I always tell people, no, if you have like a very vivid dream of a patentable idea, you can file that thing. And if you wait, there's going to be a risk to it. It's not always right to file early, but there's a risk.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The question often comes up is, hey, when should I file? And everybody wants the magic answer. There isn't a magic answer of, hey, by this point, exactly when you hit this, everybody should file a patent. It's always a balance of risk. The earlier on you file it, the less details you have, the less it's developed, and you may invest money that it may evolve down the road to where what you originally filed on, your patent doesn't really cover. And now you're saying, okay, that was a bit of a sunk cost or a sunk investment that we didn't have the money as an early startup to really invest in it. But vice versa, if you wait the longer you wait, the more you put it out there, you put it out there in the public, you put it out and you start going and pitching it to others or looking for investors or anything else, the less protection you have, the greater your risk profile goes up, where now you're putting things out there that you really don't have any level of protection. And it can go, if somebody else comes along and does something similar, and it can be thinking you have a good idea and they pursue it or something along the same lines, or they do it independently, they can, or to a large degree, block you out or otherwise cause a lot of problems with proceeding. And so I think it is always that balance of risk versus ability, or how great your risk profile is versus what your risk tolerance is.
Totally. Yeah. If the business doesn't survive, you got nothing. But you might really regret not getting some patent protection in place down the road if you pass that. So are there, Well, that's great advice. Are there any specific trends or things happening in the marketplace? You're dealing with a lot of different companies. What trends could be relevant for new companies?
I mean, I think the one that everybody hears about and it's on in the news and everything is going to be AI or artificial intelligence or machine learning, whatever you want to call it, Chat GPT, OpenAI. There's a whole bunch of different names that people start to go by. And I don't, what's interesting is, I think that everybody's saying, well, it's going to be the next revolution. And I think that there are aspects that will change or potentially change the business landscape, even within the legal aspect. But I don't know that it's going to be as or displacing as everybody thinks, in the sense that there's still going to be people that need to invent. There's still going to be businesses that are going to be out there. And just like if you were to go and do the Industrial Revolution, at the time people thought everybody was going to automate everybody's jobs out of existence.
Right.
And that wasn't the case. Now, I think that, it is interesting that as you hit these fads, so do the intellectual property filings go up. It means it's a very crowded field. A lot of people are trying to figure out how to use it, what to leverage on, where to, or how to fence out their property. And so it's kind of one of those that as something gets whatever it is, and this, a few years back was augmented and virtual reality. That was a big one. That was a crowded field, and still going. And you saw Apple come out with things, but it was for a few bursts of a few years. It was a crowded field, and you had to be very selective on what you pursued on patents. And we're kind of saying that same thing with AI and machine learning, as far as right now, there's kind of a race to everybody wanting to get their invention, their idea, something, or get their plot of intellectual property kind of set in the sand before it kind of all gets gobbled up.
Yeah, that's for sure. AI, we hear about all the time. You see companies branding themselves as AI that have been doing the same thing for years, and now AI is trendy, which is fun. But there's what's that curve called? It's the innovation curve, where there's a peak of interest and then it like mellows out and then like really builds itself. And It seems that like blockchain was another one that was huge a few years ago, everyone was talking about, and now we're in this mellow valley where people aren't talking about it, but people are building products. And so in a few years, maybe that people widely adopt that. Well, more so than now. And then AI, it's going to cool off, I think, but then long term it has implications. I use it all the time here. The one thing is we're cautious because you don't want to I would like to feed every invention disclosure into Chat GPT, but we're being cautious about confidential information. Any thoughts in that area?
It's a hard one, because if I were to go from the legal perspective, I would look at it from two different perspectives. One would be the legal perspective, which is you put in Chat GPT, you really don't know where that information is fully going. Now, they talk about privacy. They talk about how it's not going to go anywhere, and yet they are putting out a free product, and usually, or at least to a degree, you can get paid products, but there's also free. And you got to figure that they are using that information for learning algorithms, for training their AI. They're using it. Usually if something is free, you're the product. And so there's always that unknown. And then there's the whole legal aspect of now you're putting it into AI. And if AI is assisting you or otherwise are pulling from other sources that aren't you, where does the ownership lie? And I don't know there are some cases that are relevant that are early on, and I think you could point to, but I think it's still a little bit of the Wild West as far as the legal system will have to catch up on some of that. Now, in the business perspective, I think that, rightly so, it is I wouldn't say a shortcut. It is a way that you can get farther down with a more limited budget. So in other words, I am all for, and it's a biased self-interest answer, but I think that an attorney has a large degree of experience and they can help you farther along the road. And yet if I was on the business side and saying, hey, I don't know that I can take all the time and I want to get something filed, I want to get at least a demarcation in the sand, so I'm going to do a down and dirty quick provisional patent application, at least get something in there. Would I run it through Chat GPT at least to get some feedback or some formatting, some assistance, help it to flesh it in, use that versus nothing at all? Yeah. So I mean, if I was at hey, we are on a shoestring budget, I just can't afford an attorney, I would probably be using it. But so it's one where from a business perspective, I can see the merits. From a legal perspective, I think it makes you a bit more nervous.
Yeah. That has been my same thinking, and it's a little bit of a mess now. And like you say, these AI tools don't substitute for professionals and people we use right now, but they're sure better than nothing. And so that's kind of the area.
And then if you wanted to get into the copyright issues, a whole different cat worms. That one's gonna, I think, will flesh out more quickly, because you're getting a lot of images that are are getting too close to or infringing other people's copyrights, and AI doesn't care where it gets it from, and it creates it'll be interesting how even Meta is getting into the fight and others are getting into the fight, and they're saying we can't just let this go, or unregulated or at least undefined. So,
well, at the same time, there's ownership issue. Even if something is completely original, you're not supposed to be able to own, I believe, currently things that are created by AI. But how do you detect whether something's created by AI? I know you can a little bit now.
Yeah, and then now that's a whole can of worms we could talk forever. But even how do you define? Because if I'm giving you a sample, if I'm training the AI as an individual, if I say, hey, here's my original image, and I give it prompts instead, now I want you to modify or change this image. Is it the AI, or can you really say I'm still the inventor because I'm the one that fed it the original and I fed it the prompts? Can I say that I'm still the? I don't know the answer exactly. I think that it'll be one that there'll be a lot of lines that will probably get drawn by the court, and then they'll have to get redrawn because they probably didn't anticipate a lot of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, that's what's happening. So, well, great. So, Devin, can you provide advice for university and researchers and entrepreneurs who are just kind of starting out on commercialization? If you know nothing, how do you get up to speed? How do you educate yourself and decide what's important?
I don't know if it's a question that I don't know that it's a question your answer, but I'll give you my answer anyway, at least the one that comes to mind, which is, I think that more than anything, it's probably something you touched on, which is go out and just start doing it. I think especially the benefit of being, in the university setting. And that's why I said I started I'd say my real first business. I did some fun things kind of along the way, but my real first business while I was still a student studying, and it gives you it de-risks your thing because you're still a student, you're still studying, you're still preparing to go out in the job. And if you as a student or as a researcher, in a university, if you start something and it fails, it's not the end of the world. In other words, it's not your whole livelihood that's on the line. It's not your whole, wife and kids and you having to figure out how to support them. So it gives you that level of ability to go out and pursue something. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't hit right off, you're still going to learn a ton. I learned as much or more from going out while as a student and starting a business. The very first patent I drafted was for the business that I started. And that's now, and that's just continued to live on and created value. And so all of that going out and doing it while as a student, it gives you a lot of ability to make mistakes along the way that when you're out having the obligations of working sometimes makes it a lot harder to get started. So I don't know if that was a question you're answering, but that was great asking, but that'd be my piece of advice.
No, I think that is the answer, to just do it. I would say most startup companies are outlaws because they just don't know all the regulations yet. So kind of just do your best to learn as fast as you can.
But, I think if you do everything on the front end, nobody would probably ever do it. So it's probably better to not know everything or be the outlaw and learn those along the way because you're going to probably be more likely to be successful.
Yeah, there's some business research to back that up. Entrepreneurs benefit when they don't know all the risks. So that's great. Well, I'm super interested in your podcast. We have a few minutes here left, I think. And you've done something like 600 episodes. So from all those, and everyone is with an entrepreneur, I think. You interviewed Bennett Mortensen from our office. He's an entrepreneur before he came here. What are some of the key insights you think you've learned from those guys?
Yeah, the one that we just touched on is the biggest one, because we always wrap up. I always love to wrap up the podcast with the two questions. And the one question I'll always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it? And then the second one kind of goes along with yours, which is I always say, if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them? So if I were to take kind of that first question of the biggest mistake, the one that we hit on was people usually say, I wish I'd got started earlier. I wish I hadn't held off for so long. I wish I hadn't overanalyzing, something along those lines. And so I think that's one of the interesting ones. The other one is a lot of times, there's a lot of answers, 600 episodes, you get a lot of different answers. But one of the other ones that comes to mind is be careful who you bring onto your business early on. In other words, a lot of times you think you get excited, and that can be everything from you have your best friend that you're bringing on as a business owner or as a co-founder. That can be great and it can be awesome. You can also end your friendship and make it very not a fun business because it changes that. It changes from working with a friend and having a fun time to working with a friend where you both are trying to earn a living and otherwise make it. And the same thing even with, investors or other type of things. Investors can be great. They can accelerate your business. They can get an idea up and going that you don't have the funds to do yourself. but it comes along with obligations of now you have to make a return on investors. They're looking to get their money back and they need it within a reasonable time frame. All of those are not bad things, but you do want to look and say, okay, who am I almost getting married, in the sense of who am I going to be spending a large portion of my time and effort and in business with, and is that the person that I want there? And some people get into it and they find out, I'm not a person that can do a partnership. I want to, it's better if I slow it down, go it alone, and just do it at my own pace. And other people are saying, hey, I need those other people that I can do as a sounding board, and I can get that feedback, or I need those investors because I really need to be able to fund this and I don't have the personal ability. So I would say that was probably the two biggest ones that tend to get hit on. Is one is getting started earlier, and two is making sure that who you bring on to the business, especially if they have ownership or they have a portion of control with the business, that you think, or you really give that some time before you jump in.
That's great advice. And so a lot of people with our startups, because they're technical startups, people are really focused on the technology. I hope this thing works. In my experience, most companies that don't work, it's not the technology. It's these business issues you're mentioning. It's the cap table. It's one person who can't get along with the other people, something like that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of to go along with that. I get people more often than I care to, or I don't know, care to admit, because I don't mind it if they tell me. But all the time that people are coming in and saying, I've got a great idea, and do you know anybody that will just pay for an idea, that will license it, take it, and go from there? 99% of the time is like, no, it's great idea or great invention is only it's a big portion, in the sense that you have to have something to build a business around, but it is really on the execution. And execution is, do you have the right people? Do you have the right funding? Do you have the right go-to-market? You can have awesome technology. And there's been clients that I've worked with, they have really cool technology, and yet they struggle to get out in the marketplace because they don't know how they're going to sell it. They don't know how they're going to manufacture it. They don't know how they're going to price it. They don't know how they're going to find the customers. They don't know how to do all those things. And so you have to do it, or you have to have people on the team or in the business, or otherwise have a resource to help you tackle those things. And I would totally agree. While, the product is definitely a part of the business, it's not the only part of the business. And if all you focus on is that one part, it's going to be really hard to be successful unless you have something that is just so out of the box, cool, unique, that people are banging down your door to buy it, which is not 90 or 99% of businesses.
Yeah. And you have to think about what a technology gives you. I think what it does is makes it way easier to raise money, makes it easier to decide what you're going to do, like give you some direction, but it's still 90% execution. So,
yep, absolutely.
Well, great. Well, fantastic advice. Thanks for joining us here, Devin. And really appreciate your input. And everyone else will be back in a week with another episode.